Hi everybody, my name is Natalie and we're here at the Brunswick Library today. We're going to be discussing Reader's Advisory. I'm the librarian here at Brunswick and I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Hi, I'm Nicole Shanik and I'm the Teen Associate here at the Brunswick Library.
So today we're going to be talking about something called Reader's Advisory. This is a term in the library world that means finding the right book for a patron at the right time. So we do what's called an RA interview, and it sounds really formal, but it's not actually. It's just kind of a back and forth between library staff and the patron. We ask you a ton of questions just to get a sense of what you're interested in and how we could help you find a good book to take home today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about a pretty cool concept called Nancy Pearl's doorways of reading. And this is a principle that we use to sort of like guide us into like helping patrons find books. And the principle is that there are 4 doorways of reading, and they are character, story, setting, and language. And there's a fun little exercise we can do to determine which doorway is yours. And if I were to ask you, oh, tell me about your favorite book or tell me about your favorite movie, usually the first thing that you say is an indication of what your doorway is. So for me, for instance, my doorway is language. I'm somebody who really appreciates beautiful, poetic, masterful writing. So if I were to tell you about my favorite books, which are The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, I probably start by saying they're just beautifully written, really immersive. And since beautifully written is the first thing I say, that there is your indicator that I am a language person. And usually, depending on what your doorway is, you can be a little more forgiving of other elements in the story if they're a bit weaker. So if you're really a character person, you might forgive a weaker plot because you're just really invested in the characters if they're well written. But that's how I'm gonna sort of get us kicked off. And then Nicole can take over from here, and we're gonna kind of bounce back and forth a little to give you a rundown of how we go through the RA process.
All right, so picture this. Someone comes up to our desk and they say, I need help. I don't know what to read. So I usually start with, what's your favorite genre? It's a really simple question and it could open so many different doorways. Or like what mood you're in, just what are you feeling? Now, personally, my favorite genre, my genre of choice, I like to dabble in all of them, but I love horror. So I get really excited when someone says, oh, I just read this really awesome Grady Hendrix novel, which he's one of my favorite horror authors. If they don't know about other books that he's written, I like to just say, oh, here's this one. And then we kind of go off from there, and other, authors similar to that, what writing style do you like? Do you like, something that's a little bit more thought-provoking in horror? Or do you just want something fun? That's what I like to think about. Or I like to also dabble in romance. I like to have all the genres on my belt because you could get someone who comes up with, I only read historical fiction. So I hardly read historical fiction, but I like to have a little bit on my belt just, for that use. Another question we could possibly ask is, do you like realistic fiction, imaginary, fantasy? That could really help decide if we want to, lead them to Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, something like that. But if they want, a more modern take, there are, so many different authors out there that fall into that category, John Green specifically, and he has written so many different books.
So another question that we might ask the patron, which is really one of our most effective questions that's going to tell us the most about them, is tell me about a book you've recently enjoyed. So we have access to a database called Novelist, which is a really great resource for finding what we call read-alikes. If someone, for instance, loves The Hunger Games, we could go into Novelist, plug in The Hunger Games, and it's going to spit us out a list of books that are very similar to that this reader might enjoy. So obviously something like Divergent could come up on that list, Maze Runner could come up. So that's a great question to ask if they've got a good answer to that. Something else we might ask is, tell me about some TV shows, movies, video games you enjoy, especially if they're a reluctant reader. If they're a teen who's like, oh, I don't ever read anything, then, well, everybody loves some kind of storytelling, whatever medium it's in. So if they tell me, for instance, like, oh, I'm super into like The Last of Us, The Walking Dead, like, okay, well, why don't we get you like the book World War Z, because it's about a zombie apocalypse, you know, so that can sort of be a bridge to helping us pick out some stuff for them. Another question we like to ask is, do you like isolated books or do you like books as a series? Some readers might really want to get themselves immersed in one single series and just read a ton of content by the same author. So we just kind of like to get a sense of that because that'll help us with the RA stuff as well. So another question that might be helpful, especially for reluctant readers, is what are your hobbies? For instance, you know, we get a lot of like younger boys who might not necessarily be into reading, but they really love sports. So that could tell us a little bit about what kind of books they'd enjoy, because there's plenty of sports fiction out there. Some great authors who are writing really meaningful stories about boys in sports. So that's a good, you know, kind of question to have in our back pocket. Another great question to ask would be, why do you read? Not every person may be prepared to answer that question, but you could kind of prompt them and say, do you think of reading as an escape? Like, is it a mental escape for you? Or do you come to reading in order to learn more about various topics of the world? So that might suggest maybe a nonfiction reader or historical fiction reader. Someone who's more into escapism, okay, we might nudge in the direction of fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian. And then we can't ignore the fact that there might be some elements that a reader may not want to read about. And that's why things like trigger warnings exist, because you might have somebody who really doesn't want to read about death. A very common one I hear is animal death. A lot of people just will not touch a book if the dog dies, and I totally get it. Or things like profanity, sex, violence, all that stuff. So it is an important question to ask if they've got any content that they want to avoid. We definitely want to respect that. We want a book to be, you know, a safe place for its reader. There are some resources that we can go to. There's one called Common Sense Media, and there's also booktriggerwarnings.com. And I'll usually check those places just to see if there's any content I should be aware of when recommending something to someone.
A lot of teens prefer graphic novels. That is, you know, considered reading. All reading is good reading. The highly visual aspects, you know, are more engaging to a lot of teens. We have an adult graphic novel section as well. It's a highly praised form of reading, and I think that anyone who loves reading should also consider graphic novels to be a valid form of reading.
The last question we're going to talk about today that we do like to ask, usually towards the end of the RA interview, is what kind of length of a book do you like to read? Because some people really want something very short and snappy, especially readers with shorter attention spans or reluctant readers. They might just want something bite-sized, like a little novella might be a little less intimidating than, you know, a 1,000-page tome. But some people really like that. Some people do want to just chew on a book for weeks on end and have a lot of content to consume in that book. So that's another thing that we might ask our readers. All right, so all that we've just been discussing is called active reader's advisory, but we also have another form of it, which we call passive RA. And that is something where, you know, you might come in and look at some of the displays that we've put up, and you might pick a book off the display. So you are not like interacting with a staff member face to face. You're not talking to us verbally, but we are still making recommendations passively that you're picking up off the floor. And one of our more permanent kind of displays is this one, which is our staff picks. So anytime one of us finishes a really great book, we just throw it on up here and they like fly off of this shelf. Like, a lot of patrons are really interested in what staff is reading, which is fun for us too, because we really like to show off some of the great stuff that we've read lately. I've even got a couple of things that I've put over here, like this one, The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. My book club just recently read this one, and I am not a historical fiction person, but I loved this. This was a 5-star read for me. It's about the formation of the Oxford English Dictionary. It's really like a love letter to the English language. And again, because I'm a language doorway person, I'm really into the beauty of the prose and all of that good stuff. I've also got this one, which I'm going to be talking about in another segment, so I won't go too much into that one. But yeah, this is a great place if you're just like on the run and you need to grab something quick. Anything you're going to find on this shelf has been librarian stamped and approved.
All right, so a great way to connect with teens in reading, since there are some reluctant readers over here, is connect pop culture with anything, basically. I gathered every book I can find that is named after a song title. I like to ask personally, like the teens, like, what's a show you watched recently? Or what's a video game you like? I'm pretty good at finding, a book for someone if they are reluctant, which I have a lot of reluctant teens coming over here and asking about stuff like that. And I am determined to find a book for them. One of the most famous pop stars right now is Taylor Swift. And I have quite a few books on here that have Taylor Swift song titles, and no matter what age you are, no matter what the book's about, no matter what your genre is, if you see something that you already like, on something else you're not as familiar with, you're gonna hopefully instantly be interested.
And another example of that passive RA that we offer here at Brunswick is my personalized book recommendations form. So when you walk into the Brunswick Library and you come on into the reference area, one of the things you're going to see is this little table right here. This is an initiative that I launched, it's new this year, for personalized book recommendations. And I came up with this form. So this is, again, sort of what I had described earlier of the passive reader's advisory. So this is how we're gonna make some recommendations for people sort of on the fly. So some of the questions that I have on here are, what is your preferred format? We have all sorts of formats at the library. We have regular print, large print, playaways, audiobooks. So everybody reads something a little different, and so I want to make sure I'm getting the right format for you. Also, what kind of genres you enjoy. I have probably like 20 genres listed, so I can get a pretty good picture of things that you like to read about. And I've got questions like list 2 to 3 books, TVs, or movie shows you've enjoyed, why you enjoyed them, why you didn't enjoy them. That kind of stuff is really helpful. Again, that sort of trigger warning question of, are there any elements that I should avoid when picking books for you? Anything else I should know, and any particular elements you look for in a book. So sometimes people will write down, I love strong character development. That kind of gives me a hint that that person is a character person and their doorway is character. So I'm gonna make sure that whatever book that I pick for them is really strong in that aspect. If you're a little shy, you don't wanna come up to the desk and talk to one of us, or you're short on time, you just grab a form, head home, bring it back. That's a great way that we can really take our time researching stuff for you. And make some great recommendations.
Hello, Cameron. My name's Phoenix. I come to the library like every day. I get released from school all the time. I come up here with my friends. Nicole's the best. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, my name is Ramel. I am a soon-to-be student to Tri-C. And one of the books I recommend to every student to read, that's college students, high school students, is The Monster We Made by Corey Ketchen. It's one of the best books that I've read so far.
So just some final thoughts for you on the subject. We absolutely light up when someone comes to the desk and asks for help finding books to read. It's truly like one of our favorite parts of the job. So yeah, we are just very excited to help anyone, sort of jump into the library world and pick out some great stuff for you. So we are super excited to chat anytime. So please feel welcome to come into the library, and yeah, we'll get you hooked up.
One of our favorite parts of the job.